Welcome, warriors of the unseen battlefield, God's chosen soldiers. Strap in, because this ain't no gentle whisper or some feel-good pep talk. This is a full-blown war declaration, dropped in your name, a divine strike so brutal that hell itself just got silenced. No cap, no metaphor. This is spiritual LAW slamming down like a thunderbolt. Someone just detonated a bomb on your enemies. And believe me, they're still reeling from the shock. You were the silent victim, ignored, underestimated, drowning in chaos you never caused. They smeared you with zero mercy, betting your silence meant surrender. But guess what? The game flipped overnight, not because of you, but because a powerhouse just stepped into your corner. This ain't some weak Facebook rant from a random cousin. This is raw power, real receipts, and zero fear flexing hard on your behalf. And here's a twist for you. Most betrayals don't come from your enemies, but from the quiet spectators. Well, guess what? One of those silent watchers just flipped the script, and now they're calling out the truth loud and clear. Secrets are spilling. Fake friends are sweating. And the cross where you once bled, it's empty. You're rising. If you're feeling this, drop a comment with 777 to show you're tuned in. Big thanks to all the legends who've supported through Super Thanks. You're the real MVPs. Now buckle up, because what's coming next will flip the entire spiritual courtroom on its head. Ready? Let's dive deep. God's chosen ones. Someone just declared war on your enemies, on your behalf. They once mocked you with cruel laughter, confident that no force would rise to your defense. Those very voices that sneered at your solitude and dismissed your struggles now tremble, unsettled by an unexpected guardian who has declared war on your enemies on your behalf. Who could have foreseen such a fierce protector emerging from the shadows? This is not mere chance, it is divine orchestration. The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge. Psalm 18:2. Can you feel the seismic shift in the unseen spiritual battlefield as the tides of justice turn? How long have you carried the weight of silent battles, only to see your tormentors grow bolder, mistaking your humility for weakness? These adversaries, once cocky and loud with their falsehoods, believed your silence equated to surrender. They interpreted your restraint as an open invitation to undermine you further, like a river carving a canyon over centuries. They underestimated the slow but inevitable power swelling beneath your calm exterior. Yet, unbeknownst to them, a force greater than human understanding has risen, one whose voice echoes with authority and whose actions ripple through the fabric of reality like the precise resonance of a tuning fork, awakening dormant frequencies. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you victory. Deuteronomy 20:4. Who watches now from the unseen realm, turning their schemes into dust. The story of Nehemiah, the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, a man who rebuilt Jerusalem's walls despite fierce opposition. His enemies laughed and conspired in the shadows. Yet Nehemiah's faith galvanized the people, and the walls rose, stone by stone, prayer by prayer, until those who mocked were silenced by the fortress of perseverance and divine protection. Are your enemies stumbling over their own lies now, desperate to conceal their guilt? How does it feel to witness the unraveling of the false narratives built to diminish you? In today's world, The echo of such divine intervention is seen in the life of Nelson Mandela, the South African revolutionary and statesman who faced decades of imprisonment and ridicule. Yet, his resolve never wavered. When he emerged, his voice became a clarion call that dismantled apartheid, turning bitter enemies into cautious allies. Like the slow but unrelenting growth of an ancient oak from a tiny acorn, Mandela's strength lay in roots nourished by endurance and unwavering faith. Who in your life mirrors such resilience, standing as a testament to the power of unseen backing behind the scenes? The villains who once mocked you now hold emergency councils, scrambling to rewrite histories and erase evidence. They are the spiritual architects of chaos, designing structures of deceit that once seemed impenetrable. But every fortress has its hidden faults. Every grand design contains a keystone vulnerable to removal. The person defending you wields the master key, dismantling their crooked constructions piece by piece, exposing the cracks with the precision of a laser cutting through stone. The Lord will vindicate me. Your love, Lord, endures forever. Do not abandon the works of your hands. Psalm 138:8. Can the architects of your suffering withstand the spotlight now turned upon their shadows? In the cosmic interplay of energies, your defenders operate like electromagnetic resonance, amplifying truth while silencing deception. Like a lone wolf howling beneath the moon, their voice summons justice from the wild forests of the spirit realm, disrupting the predators lurking in darkness. The biblical figure of Esther, who rose from obscurity to save her people, reminds us that timing and courage create unstoppable currents. Her quiet influence in the king's court overturned the plots of wicked Haman, whose own schemes led to his downfall. This is the divine architecture of justice, where shadows collapse under the weight of faith and truth. Justice will go before him, and righteousness will follow his steps. Psalm 85:13. In your personal story, who embodies this courage that changes destinies? This unfolding drama is not just defense, it is a celestial correction. The defenders wield the torch of exposure, illuminating the concealed rot, shaking the foundations of the oppressor's realm. You are no longer the isolated figure they presumed you to be. You are a cathedral of resilience, constructed with the unyielding materials of faith, patience, and righteous indignation. The war declared is real, relentless, and victorious. The same voices that once tore at your spirit now whisper in fear, scrambling to silence the very truth they tried to bury. Standing at this threshold, it is time to rise with the roar of a mountain lion reclaiming its territory. Fierce and unyielding, the moment calls for unwavering faith and bold action. Will you stand silent, or will you claim the victory destined for you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1-9. The hour of reckoning has come. Embrace your divine defender and rise. In moments when silence once shielded your adversaries, a single authoritative voice now shatters, that quiet like the crack of dawn splitting the darkest night. What force could this be? One voice amidst a sea of indifference, yet more powerful than the roar of 1,000 faceless crowds. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. Psalm 34-17. How often have you borne the burden of injustice alone, while many around you whispered in silence, afraid to step forward? What unseen power now breathes life into the solitary voice that commands the storms to cease? You never needed the echoing clamor of multitudes to validate your truth. Like a single lighthouse, piercing through a fog-bound coastline. One clear, unwavering beacon is sufficient to guide the lost and expose lurking dangers. Your voice was there, resonating like a subtle frequency within the collective noise, yet deliberately tuned out. Others preferred the comfort of their silence to the courage of confrontation. This phenomenon mirrors the psychological concept of bystander effect, where crowds diminish individual responsibility. Yet here, the tide turns because one beacon refuses to be dimmed. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Proverbs 31:8. Could one voice truly unravel the web of deceit that crowds once wove around you? Recall the haunting melody from the European film The Mission, a story of Jesuit priests defending indigenous peoples amid hostile forces. In one pivotal scene, a solitary whistle cuts through the cacophony of conflict, signaling hope and resistance. This single sound reverberates with more potency than an army's march, turning tides in ways no mass uprising could. Similarly, the voice now raised for you is not seeking applause, but wielding the power of undeniable truth. It acts as a resonant frequency, breaking the dissonance of lies and awakening dormant consciences. Those who once mocked your struggles, cloaked in shadows of denial, are now scrambling like startled deer caught in the open under a relentless sun. Their carefully constructed facades, much like brittle branches in a fierce storm, are breaking apart under the force of this solitary declaration. This voice cuts through the psychological fog of complicity, forcing a reckoning where once there was complacency. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Why does the presence of this singular champion instill more dread than the combined silence of multitudes? Behind closed doors, the architects of your oppression hastily attempt to cleanse their reputations. But the blueprint of their deceit is now exposed under this piercing spotlight. The voice defending you functions like a keystone in a vaulted ceiling once removed. The entire structure crumbles. The justice being administered is not vengeful but restorative, echoing the principles of cosmic balance found in physics. Every action invokes an equal and opposite reaction. In your personal narrative, this moment is a psychological turning point, akin to the breaking of a dam that releases years of pent-up currents. It is not a call for a battle cry from a crowd, but a quiet, unwavering assertion that suffices to shift the very axis on which your world spins. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Proverbs 18:21. Whose voice do you hear rising in your defense? What unseen forces have conspired to bring this deliverance precisely when you need it most? This is your moment to stand with renewed courage, knowing that while many were silent, one voice has chosen to roar on your behalf. The shadows that once concealed lies and pain now tremble under this luminous declaration of truth. Let the world witness that it takes not the volume of a crowd, but the clarity of one courageous soul to turn injustice into triumph. The question remains, will you rise alongside this voice and claim the justice woven into your destiny? They once felt untouchable, thriving in the shadows of your silence, mistreating you with reckless comfort because they believed no worthy eyes were upon their deeds. Their cruelty was not just crossing boundaries, it was a deliberate choreography of disdain, a dance on the fragile edges of your dignity. Like a predator circling an unaware prey in the dense underbrush of a silent forest. What gave them such audacity? Was it the illusion of invisibility, the false architecture of impunity they built with cold precision? The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. Proverbs 4:19. How often have abusers felt invincible behind the veil of secrecy, convinced the pillars of justice would never bear the weight of their reckoning? This twisted game was sustained by the physics of social isolation, where the absence of witnesses diminished the force of your resistance, like a dampened frequency losing amplitude over distance. They exploited your grace, interpreting it through the lens of psychological projection as weakness, not the formidable strength it truly was. Yet, in the invisible planes of your spirit, like a finely tuned crystal lattice awaiting resonance, a change was brewing. The story of Harriet Tubman, the fearless conductor of the Underground Railroad, who moved unseen yet with immense influence, guiding the oppressed from darkness into freedom. Though surrounded by threats and silence, her presence was a seismic tremor, felt deeply by those who wielded chains. What can we learn from her unyielding courage? How does one person's resolve cause entire systems to tremble? Now, those who once thrived on your invisibility find themselves navigating a precarious labyrinth, much like master builders forced to reconstruct a cathedral after the keystone is dislodged. Their confidence cracks under the new surveillance, a presence with integrity and influence, refusing to allow injustice to linger. The bold swagger once worn like armor has dissolved, replaced by cautious whispers and forced neutrality. The Lord examines the righteous, but the wicked, those who love violence, He hates with a passion. Psalm 11:5. What unseen forces compel these shadows to shrink and scurry when confronted with the steady light of accountability? The body language of your oppressors now betrays their inner turmoil. The tense shoulders, faltering eye contact, the sharp shift in tone, symptoms of cognitive dissonance heightened by exposure. Their psychological equilibrium fractures, much like a suspended bridge trembling under an unexpected load. How does it feel when those who once felt untouchable suddenly sense the tremors beneath their feet? What architectural faults in their moral foundation are now exposed for all to see? Behind this transformation stands a defender whose watchfulness resembles a celestial sentinel, steady, unblinking, and unwavering. This is not a mere whisper from the shadows, but a forceful confrontation, an unveiling that reverberates like a gong in the stillness of a spiritual arena. The pressure mounts for those who believed they had free rein. The walls of their secrecy crumble with the precision of seismic waves dismantling brittle stone. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. 2 Chronicles 16:9. This turning point is your personal crescendo, a moment of profound reckoning where the tides shift and the scales balance. The tables have not merely turned, they have flipped with the force of a tectonic plate reshaping the landscape. Your endurance, your silent strength, has summoned a reckoning that alters the very geometry of your world. Who now stands with you in this transformed arena? What new resonance fills the space where fear once reigned? It is time to rise. Standing tall, like the towering redwoods that withstand centuries of storms, unyielding, majestic, and deeply rooted in truth, the one watching, defending, and confronting injustice calls you to embrace this dawn of justice. Be strong, and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord. Psalm 31-24. This is the moment to reclaim your power, for the architecture of your life is being reforged by divine hands. Will you stand firm and walk boldly into the light? They branded you a liar with polished faces and practiced empathy, repeating the accusation until it sounded like consensus. They painted you as bitter, unstable, grasping for attention, and they rehearsed their lines so often that even people who loved you started to hesitate. They had a chorus. They had props. They had rehearsed statements. And because you refused to wrestle in the mud, they mistook your restraint for surrender. But some truths refuse to stay buried. There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. Luke 12:2. What happens to a storyline built on performance when the curtain lifts and the audience sees the stagehands holding the strings? They did not simply challenge your account. They engineered a version of reality where your words were downgraded to noise. Their confidence fed on your supposed isolation, and repetition became their chosen instrument. Yet repetition does not turn fiction into fact. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. Proverbs 12:19. Why did they look so certain? Because they believed no one outside their circle would ever check the record. Then, at an hour you did not choreograph, a new figure stepped forward, someone with standing, with access, with dates and details you never knew existed. Not a sympathizer offering comfort, but a witness holding receipts. You didn't have to beg anyone to believe you, scramble for screenshots, or tape every conversation. Heaven did not assign you to chase justice. Heaven sent justice to you. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Psalm 37:6. Who opened the archive you never knew was being kept? The shift was immediate. The story that once sounded airtight fractured along every fault line, not in private murmurs, but in plain, documented fact. Voice notes, emails, time-stamped messages, first-hand statements, system logs, and verifications from places you could never reach. The silence in the room changed texture. Smirks turned into tight jaws. The performative concern vanished. You saw it in their eyes, not conviction, but calculation. No weapon forged against you shall prosper, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. Isaiah 54:17. How quickly does arrogance evaporate when proof arrives that doesn't need an introduction? To see how a single witness can redirect history, recall this recent public figure, Frances Haugen, a data scientist and former employee at a major social platform. Introduced briefly, she is known for turning over large sets of internal documents to authorities and journalists. Her disclosures didn't rely on opinions, they rested on records, whether one agreed with every interpretation or not. The point stands. Evidence compels attention in ways sentiment never can. In your story, a similarly positioned defender stepped in with what couldn't be dismissed, the receipts that erase speculation, and there must be a reckoning with antagonists as well. A cautionary case is Bernie Madoff, once celebrated in finance, later exposed for a vast fraud. He cultivated belief through repetition, reputation, and polished assurances, until ledgers and investigations stripped away the facade. The consequences were crushing: conviction, imprisonment, and a legacy synonymous with betrayal and loss. When lies meet documentation, outcomes change from debate to judgment. The lesson is not about celebrity, it's about gravity. A narrative stitched from deceit cannot withstand the weight of verified fact. Now watch the reaction cascade. Those who swore they knew the truth are revising their memories in real time. Those who said, "There's nothing to see," are suddenly unavailable for comment. The same people who rolled their eyes at your pain are busy editing their involvement, softening their quotes, and lowering their voices. But the record does not bend to convenience. The record stands. Contend, Lord, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me. Psalm 35:1. What doors open in your life when truth begins speaking with documents rather than pleading with opinions? Here is the most powerful part. You did not have to destroy anyone. You did not have to scorch the earth or spend your strength convincing those committed to confusion. The truth did the work. The advocate assigned to you did not come to posture, they came to present. And the presentation was decisive. Facts have a way of turning down the volume on gaslighting. Receipts have a way of converting whispers into confessions. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Freedom feels different when it arrives with exhibits attached. What happens next is not spectacle, it is clarity. Those who built platforms on your name without your consent will find those platforms wobbling. Those who learned to weaponize rumors will face the consequences of their craft. And you will not be defined by what they alleged, but by what was proven. The headline is no longer their accusation. The headline is the record. The grace you carried through their mockery now becomes the strength you carry into your restoration. Reclaim your name. Step forward with a steady spine and clear eyes. Do not rehearse their version anymore. Stand in the version authenticated by evidence and sealed by God's timing. Speak blessing over your future. Walk back into rooms that once felt hostile with quiet authority. This is not the hour to shrink. This is the hour to plant your feet. What they built on deception has been exposed, and what God has established for you will not be moved. The room that once cheered for them went silent as stone. The one person they admired most, the voice they measure themselves against, not for holiness, but for status, stood up, leveled the air, and said the sentence that split the floorboards. You're the problem, not them. The sound of it moved like a cold front through summer heat. Breath stalled, eyes fixed, and the instruments of manipulation, pity, postures, staged outrage. Crocodile tears fell to the ground like props after a curtain call. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Proverbs 12:19. Haven't you felt it the way a single syllable of truth can weigh more than years of theatrics? For so long they built a throne out of perception. They choreographed the narrative because no one challenged the choreography. They were the loudest, the glossiest, the most practiced at guiding the crowd's attention. People bowed to the version of events most aggressively advertised, not because it was solid, but because it was loud. Then, a respected voice cut through the noise. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. When freedom enters a room, it doesn't always arrive with fanfare. It arrives the way dawn trespasses a dark valley, quietly. And then everything is different. What happens inside a person when the story they swallowed starts to taste like ash? The sentence wasn't whispered. It wasn't smuggled behind polite doors. It was said openly, firmly, with the kind of gravity that makes even the clock pause between ticks. Masks that once seemed welded on began to slip. The paint of performance ran. The familiar scripts sounded foolish in the new acoustics of honesty. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Psalm 37:6. Isn't it stunning how quickly dots begin to connect once the fog lifts? The sympathy they harvested so easily has dried up like a riverbed after the headwaters reroute. In the wild, some seeds only crack open after fire. The blaze that was meant to consume the forest instead awakens what was waiting beneath the soil. That's this moment. The heat exposed what could survive it. They tried to keep that one credible voice out, change the guest list, edit the angle, dim the lamp. But now that voice is knee-deep in the mess, naming patterns with steady hands, separating habit from accident, spotlight from substance, For we cannot do anything against the truth, but only for the truth. 2 Corinthians 13:8. You can almost hear the glass of their illusion, stress, and splinter when a glacier calves. The face of ice looks solid until the pressure inside demands a roar. Then a whole cathedral of blue breaks free and crashes into open water. Which piece was the first crack, the brag, the blame shift, or the borrowed outrage? They are scrambling now, grabbing at any thread left in their unraveling garment, projecting blame, inventing side plots, begging old loyalties to do one more favor. But the crowd's center of gravity has shifted. The person they long used as a mirror has stopped reflecting and started revealing. No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. When a kingfisher dives, water parts without apology. Once truth has momentum, there is no pause button. And when the river shifts its course, sandbars that looked permanent become ordinary shore. A line from the European musical Les Miserables captures this turning. Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. There's something about that rise that embarrasses counterfeit moons. Night tricks the eye by borrowing light. Morning ends the charade. In a rainforest, the glass frog's skin is so translucent you can see the heart working. There's a holiness to that kind of transparency. That's what the respected voice just demanded of the room. Hearts on the outside, not masks on the inside. And the audience senses it. The hush that follows isn't fear. It's the architecture of awe, assembling itself beam by beam. Once, they could sway the crowd with a sigh. Now the same sigh sounds staged. Once, they could point a finger and watch everyone nod. Now the finger looks strangely alone in the air. The plot that once made you the villain has lost its soundtrack. The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? Psalm 27:1. If a sunflower can't face the sun, it twists itself trying. The soul does something similar when it's forced to orbit a lie. But grace turns the stem, even if it creaks. Here's the miracle you didn't have to manufacture. The truth rose on your behalf while you stood still. The defense you never begged for arrived by its own legs. Carrying receipts the crowd can finally read. An octopus can bluff with color, but the ocean remembers every current. The patterns of movement tell on the hunter in the end. And now the room knows what the water knew. The performance era is over. The crowd is witnessing something more ancient than applause, a reckoning as old as thunderhead and as precise as a hummingbird's hovering. And you? You didn't have to say a thing. And yet, there's a question lingering like the last chime in a tower. When truth clears the stage, who will you be in the bright? Another. If the mask is gone for them, is the weight finally gone for you? Another. Now that the river's course has changed, what shore is calling your feet? And one more. With the sun rising this openly, what promise will you dare to live without flinching? Because here's the bottom line spoken plainly, publicly, and with the same firmness that shifted the whole room. Rise. Stand tall in the place where you were once falsely accused. Walk forward while their paper crown melts in the rain of reality. Step into your day with both hands open and your spine unbent. This is not revenge. This is release. This is not noise. This is clarity. Lift your head. Steady your breath. Plant your feet. And move. The curtain that hid you has fallen. The stage belongs to the truth now, and to those who carry it without fear. Your character is being defended in rooms you were never allowed to enter, while they were preoccupied with shutting you out, shutting you down, and shutting you up. Something divine was already in motion, an unseen logistics chain of grace. They locked doors. Thinking, access equals authority. They engineered guest lists, thinking proximity equals protection. They tried to compress your future by collapsing your signal-to-noise ratio, flooding the channel with gossip, so the message of who you really are couldn't phase lock. But the architect of heaven had already drawn another ingress on the blueprint. You never needed their corridor. There was a service entrance they didn't know existed. What you have said in the dark shall be heard in the light, and what you have whispered in private rooms shall be proclaimed on the housetops. Luke 12:3. If decisions about you were being made out of your earshot, who arranged for your name to be read from the minutes anyway? They blocked your access, uninvited you from conversations, and set your name low while polishing their lies high. This wasn't mere exclusion, it was an attempted erasure confirmation bias dressed up as consensus. Yet even as they curated the echo chamber, a trusted voice with gravitas, not swayed by sentiment but anchored in verifiable facts, entered the circle like a court-appointed expert witness, where others trafficked in rumors. This person delivered audit trail clarity. Rooms where your reputation had been casually dismantled began to experience a Bayesian update. New evidence forcing old beliefs to reweigh. The scripts that once sounded persuasive suddenly revealed their logical fallacies, their dependence on groupthink and anchoring effects. The insider didn't argue loudly. They presented a pattern, context, and timeline. The effect was architectural. Truth was not a fresh coat of paint. It was a load-bearing wall discovered behind a false partition. He frustrates the devices of the crafty so that their hands achieve no success. Job 5:12. If the scaffolding of a lie can't pass a stress test, what happens when the first tensile strength measurement is taken in public? This isn't just anyone defending you. It is someone whose reputation functions like a keystone the arch holds because they stand there. Their words carry more weight than the smearing coalition's entire inventory of insinuations. Not emotion evidence, not theatrics, traceability. When they spoke, constructive interference amplified the signal of truth, while acoustic damping muted the chorus of slander. The same people who nodded along during your defamation now sit in responsible silence. The room's phase has shifted. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Psalm 37:6. Which part of their narrative collapses first? The forged timeline, the unverifiable source, or the motive they never disclosed? And here's the twist. Your absence was misread as defeat. They assumed that if you weren't in the chamber, you were defenseless. They didn't account for divine placement, for God placing a witness inside the system with both domain authority and relational capital. That person saw through the choreography, grew weary of injustice masquerading as agreement, and changed the control room settings from theater to truth. Suddenly the conversations shifted. Smear, campaign syntax began to look like a predictable template instead of a revelation. The room started asking for primary sources, timestamps, and corroboration. No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. If the weapon was a whisper, what happens when God turns up the lights and hands out transcripts? To ground this in real life, Carla Harris, a veteran Wall Street executive and leadership speaker, famously teaches that the most pivotal choices about your future are often made in a room you are not in. Her counsel about sponsorship over mentorship captures exactly what's happening for you. Someone with standing is attaching their credibility to your name, and the room is recalibrating accordingly. In another sphere, Pope Benedict XVI, theologian and former pontiff, once warned that truth is not established by a majority vote. In circles where consensus had become a substitute for integrity, that principle is suddenly operative. Truth is asserting first principles over popularity. Picture the spiritual architecture. Heaven's blueprint placed a hidden corridor across the floor plan of your life, a discreet passage connecting no entry rooms to the throne room of favor. A keystone moment was installed above your story so that, at the appointed time, pressure would resolve into support instead of collapse. In the quiet interval between rounds, the untelevised space where corners speak to fighters and strategy overrules, adrenaline, God inserted a word through the right mouth. No megafones, no spectacle. Just a decisive instruction at the bell. Defend the one who isn't here to defend themselves. Now the threads of the lie are being pulled, one by one. The inside joke confidence has drained from their faces. The rehearsed lines sound thin in a room that's reacquired its moral acoustics. People are quietly ashamed of having lent their ears to a frequency that now registers as out of phase with reality. Your name is being covered by someone who is not afraid of losing social capital by telling the truth. And the more the truth is spoken, the more the room's eigenfrequency changes. Slander can't sustain oscillation in an environment tuned to integrity. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Psalm 27:1. If fear once held the mic, why is it stuttering now that light has the floor? Here is the significance beneath the surface. You were protected in spaces you were never invited to. You were advocated for by credentials you did not borrow. The trial ended before you even knew the court was in session. That is not luck. That is divine jurisprudence. Your character is being restored without self-defense. Your file corrected without an appeal you had to draft. The very energy used to erase you is now being reallocated from destructive interference to constructive alignment, so that what is true about you stands with its own internal coherence. And the room, it's learning that truth doesn't shout, truth stands. Reclaim your posture. Walk through the doorway, God opened on a blueprint no committee could edit. Bow to no counterfeit tribunal, and waste no breath on rebuttals. God has already issued on your behalf. Shoulders back, eyes steady. Step into the room when invited not to argue, but to occupy. The verdict has gone ahead of you. Live like it. They're switching sides now, and it isn't devotion. It's dread. The same people who enabled the abuse are scrambling to rebrand themselves as neutral, wise, or suddenly supportive. But neutrality was never their posture. Absence of courage simply masqueraded as balance. They watched the smears gain momentum. They heard the rehearsed lines, saw the doors close, felt the temperature shift against you, and let it happen. Some even stitched on sympathy in public while staying tethered to the circle that cut you down. Their silence wasn't harmless, it was scaffolding for harm. Whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. James 4:17. If they recognized the wrong then, why is their voice only arriving now? They told themselves they were staying out of drama while your name was dragged through private halls. That passivity created room for bolder attacks. The quiet made the loud seem credible. Now that a respected advocate is speaking up for you in the spaces that once banned the truth, everything is tilting. The whisper network is less confident. The side glances have lost nerve. And those neutrals, they're in motion liking posts, forwarding your words, issuing vague apologies that mention misunderstandings without naming a single one. It isn't moral clarity that's moving them. It's the terror of being listed among the complicit when the record is read. They feel the ground change as truth enters the room with documentation, dates, and memory. They know it's only a matter of time before receipts are opened and patterns are traced. They are afraid of being seen as what they were, enablers dressed as spectators. So they jump ship, angle for proximity to your name and try to retroactively edit their role, but swapping sides after the tide turns is not repentance, it's survival. Nothing is covered up that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. Luke 12:2. If revelation has begun, what chapter are they racing to skip? You do not owe access to those who only arrived when it became safe. Your loyalty is not a prize for latecomers to integrity. They are protecting themselves because the advocate defending you now carries the kind of influence that changes verdicts in the social court. That voice carries weight, and weight resets the entire room. Former bystanders are suddenly public allies, not because they value truth, but because they fear exposure. They stopped ignoring you, not out of honor, but out of calculation. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. Proverbs 17:15. If condemning the innocent was easy for them yesterday, what makes today's compliments trustworthy? To anchor this in real-life leadership, Brian Stevenson, civil rights attorney and founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, is known for walking into high-stakes rooms and insisting that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. His presence often shifts the moral frame, not because he is loud, but because he is credible and unflinching. When a voice like that enters, people who were undecided start revising their posture, some from conviction, many from fear. Which group is showing up around you now? And a cautionary counterexample, the villain pattern and its cost. Elizabeth Holmes, once celebrated as a visionary founder, enjoyed a chorus of enablers who smoothed over doubts and amplified a curated story. When truth and accountability finally arrived, consequences followed: public exposure, legal judgment, reputations damaged in her orbit, and a permanent record that could not be massaged by last-minute declarations of support. The lesson is plain: when a crowd props up deception, that crowd does not escape the bill. Back in your story, the switch-ups are obvious. The same accounts that once ignored your work now share your lines. The same voices that dismissed you now call you resilient. The same small circles that traded rumors now request meetings and extend invitations. This isn't redemption, it's risk management. They want to be photographed on the right side of the moment, not formed by the right side of truth. You can forgive without reopening the gates. Boundaries are not bitterness, they are wisdom in motion. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Romans 12:19. If God has already taken the case, why would you rush to hand out passes to those who watched you be tried in absentia? Here's what's actually happening. The narrative is becoming public record. Your story is stabilizing in the open, where evasions lose oxygen. People who traded in innuendo sense that names might be named and timelines reconstructed. They're moving not toward you, but away from the liability of having been against you. Their apologies are non-specific because specifics would implicate them. Their compliments are broad because detail would expose their prior contempt. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Isaiah 5:20. If today's praises contradict yesterday's actions, which version should be believed? And there's one more question worth asking. When the truth is no longer expensive, who pays the bill for the days it was? You carried that cost, reputation strained, opportunities deferred, rooms closed. Now those rooms are opening. Not because the enablers have changed hearts, but because the truth has changed the stakes. Stand steady. Let records be corrected without trading away your discernment. Accept genuine repentance where it's proven over time. But do not confuse fear of fallout with love of truth. Your name does not need the signatures of those who abandoned it. The ones who flipped when courage became cheap can watch your rise from a distance. The ones who stood when courage was costly can walk beside you. That is not pettiness, that is order. There is a difference between reconciliation and re-invitation, between peace and access, between grace and gullibility. Your boundaries do not cancel mercy, they protect it. Stand up, lift your head, and keep your stride. Walk past the doors that once pretended to control your future. Do not barter away clarity to accommodate people who only arrive when the cameras do. Move forward with clean hands, a steady voice, and a memory that honors the few who stayed. You are not here because the fearful flipped. You are here because the truth stood. Keep standing. Divine timing made sure they were watching. When the truth exploded, the unveiling did not arrive while you were still bleeding, counting shards and whispering prayers into your pillow. It refused to break open in the midnight hour when you wondered if anyone would ever believe you. It waited on purpose. For the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Habakkuk 2-3. What if the pause was never abandonment, but choreography? Heaven chose the moment when they were loudest, when the performance had reached a swagger, when fresh lies were stacked on old ones, like unstable stones. Pride had granted them a false altitude. Then the timing shifted. And truth didn't tiptoe, it detonated. Think of periodical cicadas, sleeping under the soil for long, silent years. Then, erupting on a precise clock the forest cannot ignore. What if your vindication followed a similar hidden math? Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16:18. Have you noticed how the breakthrough arrived the very hour they decided they were untouchable? This was not random. It was calculated by heaven's patient wisdom. God could have exposed them earlier, but did not. He let their scaffolding climb higher so that the collapse would be undeniable. He permitted the crowd to clap, the sympathies to gather, the false halo to gleam, so the contrast would cut deeper when light finally struck. Like a river that spends months carving a tight bend, and then, in one flood stage, slices through the neck to form an oxbow lake. Suddenly the whole map changes. Yet the change had been building all along. When the turn came, it wasn't quiet or private. It was public, sharp, and inescapable. The timing had an audience on purpose. Those who had applauded began to retreat. Those who had forwarded rumors started deleting messages and backpedaling through their own echoes. Why the sudden distance? Because they saw it. The unveiling demanded witnesses, for nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. When the mask shattered, who flinched first, the performer or the audience? Truth arrived like the aurora, igniting sky dark with ribbons of proof visible from far away. Impossible to ignore up close. The same mouths that once parroted a script now speak in hesitant fragments. The same hands that pushed you out now fidget with the doorknob, unsure how to open what they helped close. Picture a meadow at dawn. A web invisible all night becomes a jeweled lattice when the dew arrives. The exposure worked like that. Suddenly the entire pattern of threads, cross ties, and anchoring points gleamed. What they claimed as misunderstandings revealed itself as design. This is how divine justice moves. It doesn't rush for applause. It waits for maximum clarity, not just to correct a record, but to redefine a reputation. The unveiling landed at the apex of their boasting, so the descent would be steep and instructive. The Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees that his day is coming. Psalm 37:13. And an old European voice nods from the stage. In Hamlet, Shakespeare wrote, "Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth o'erwhelm them, to men's eyes. When the water recedes, the riverbed tells the full story." Which footprints do you recognize now that the floodlight is steady? They thought your silence meant surrender. They mistook your absence for defeat. But the reveal was timed for a crowd, not a whisper. Fireflies sometimes synchronize across an entire grove. What begins as scattered pulses becomes one sweeping rhythm. The moment the first undeniable flash lit the room, the rest followed, eyes opened, whispers quieted, and the rhythm of truth overtook the beat of rumor. And you didn't have to chase a microphone or beg for a platform. The platform came to you. Heaven's timing also guarded your heart. If the exposure had come too early, it might have landed on your raw places and turned into another kind of wound. Instead, it landed when your roots had deepened like a lone pine, learning to flex in winter gales, until the gale arrives and finds a trunk that will not snap. The reveal wasn't for spectacle, it was for strength. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Now that truth stands in daylight, what step becomes non-negotiable for you? Watch the ripple effects. The ones who repeated the script now scramble for exits. Deleting threads that once felt clever, the ones who basked in borrowed glow now shade their eyes and say, they never really knew. But the point of the timing is bigger than their discomfort. It's that no one can claim ignorance anymore. The mask didn't slip, it shattered, and the shards drew blood on the way down. That sting is instruction, not cruelty. A reminder that deception always charges a fee. Along the tree line of your story, another image appears. Coral reefs that look quiet by day suddenly release millions of luminous eggs in a coordinated night, timed to moon and tide, so the sea cannot miss it. Vindication worked like that, not a trickle, but a synchronized release. The same God who ordains seasons knows when an unveiling will teach more than it punishes, heal more than it humiliates. And silence, what can't live in open air. And here you stand, no grand speech required, no dossier unfurled on a table. The truth did the work. The timing made sure the right eyes were in the room. The fallout will continue, but it's no longer your job to manage it. Your task is simpler and braver. Keep your spirit clean. Hold your boundaries. Refuse the bait. And step forward with your name unbent. The door that once held you outside no longer has the authority to define inside. The story is public record, now written not in anger but in daylight. Square your shoulders and walk through this hour with a steady gaze. Do not barter your peace for their panic or trade your clarity for their edits. Bless those who repent with fruit, not just words. Keep a holy distance from those who only fear the fallout. Lift your head. Breathe and move. This is your time to build on bedrock, not on noise. Heaven timed the reveal. Heaven will time the rise. You never had to prove anything, you were the proof. Evidence wasn't hiding in a speech you never gave. It lived in your baseline behavior, the kind that survives longitudinal scrutiny. They kept provoking for an amygdala hijack, stacking triggers to engineer a scene they could replay as proof against you. They wanted a clip, a spike, a noise burst. You gave them none. Your restraint became a signal. Their bait became noise. And the room's signal-to-noise ratio started telling the truth without you saying a word. The Lord will fight for you, You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. If the battle belongs to God, what case was left for you to argue? They poked, prodded, and baited, hoping to push you past homeostatic equilibrium so they could caption your reaction as guilt. You didn't enter their closed loop of provocation and response. You refused the script, and the silence they mocked became data repeatable, measurable, inconvenient to their story. Your proof was never in what you said, it was in what you endured. While others ran hot, you maintained metastability, flexible under stress, without flipping into chaos. That self-control exposed the true phase state of the room. Your peace was coherent, their performance was turbulent. In an architectural sense, you were the hidden load path, quiet, unseen, carrying weight the facade could not. And in the quiet interval between rounds, when the bell has paused the noise, and only a cornerman can speak, heaven leaned in and said, "Hold, breathe, stay composed. In returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength." Isaiah 30:15. Why did restraint reveal more than rebuttal ever could? Now someone else, the right someone, has caught it. Not a cheerleader, not a gossip, but a credible observer whose words function like a calibrated instrument. They watched the time series of events, not a single frame. They recognized the Bayesian posterior. With each new moment, you remained steady, while the other side multiplied contradictions. The probability shifted decisively toward your integrity, and their speaking clear, public, unafraid, putting language to what your endurance already proved. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. 1 Peter 2:23. When an advocate speaks from pattern, not impulse. How long can theatrics compete with traceable timelines? This is heaven's architecture at work. The blueprint for your vindication was not a decorative sketch. It was a structural drawing. Providence placed a cantilever of grace where no one expected support. A truss of sovereignty, spanning the gap haters swore you could not cross. And a clerestory of timing that poured daylight at the precise hour. Their narrative needed shadow. You were not posturing, you were anchored. And from the neutral corner, God signaled the same instruction between rounds. No wild swings. Keep your guard. Let truth accumulate like points on the card. The bell would ring when it was time to advance. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn. Psalm 37:5-6. Which round are you in now, the holding round? Or the one where the judge finally reads the score? To ground this in real-world wisdom, John Wooden, legendary basketball coach, taught, be more concerned with your character than your reputation. Your character is what you really are. Your reputation is merely what others think you are. His record wasn't built on noise, but on repeatable fundamentals under pressure, the same mechanics your life has displayed, and from a different field. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, observed, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Your choice to live in that space again and again became empirical proof that manipulation couldn't draft you into its cycle. Your calm versus their chaos. Your steady Q factor versus their distortion. Your refusal to retaliate revealed intent more reliably than any argument could. Over time, the room experienced a phase transition. Your silence started reading as strength. Their loudness started reading as instability. By patience, a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. Proverbs 25:15. What if the soft tongue here was not sweetness but controlled force? the kind that fractures falsehood without theatrics. Now, interpretation has begun. Your quiet is being read correctly. The advocate is not speaking over you. They're speaking for you, translating endurance into language the crowd understands. They're mapping the causal graph. Your restraint did not cause the chaos. It controlled for it, isolating variables until only the truth could remain. And as the room recalibrates, the old narrative fails its stress test. Too many joints that can't carry load. Too many beams that are never tied into the structure. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Psalm 18:19. If you've stepped into a broader place, what boundary becomes non-negotiable now? They once accused you. You never had to. They begged you to react. You declined the invitation. You didn't scream. But your peace amplified like constructive resonance in a hall tuned for truth. You didn't retaliate. Yet your restraint acted like damping, absorbing shock until fake momentum collapsed on itself. And the witness in the room, armed with credibility, not volume, simply narrated what everyone could now see. You were never the problem. You were always the evidence. Here's the outcome. Your stillness has become the final word in a battle you never had to fight out loud. The case is closed by coherence, not by clamor, by integrity under load, not by applause. Keep your stance. Keep your breath. Keep your edge. The bell is about to ring, and the only thing left to do is step forward with the same composure that brought you here. Shoulders square, eyes clear. Walk through the doorway, heaven framed on the blueprint. No committee can edit. Do not trade your clarity for anyone's comfort. Guard the space between stimulus and response. Speak when led. And let your record do the heavy lifting when you are not. The verdict is written. Live like it. The one defending you isn't just loyal, they're dangerous to your enemies. This is not a polite nod from the sidelines or a discreet thoughts and prayers in a hallway. This is deliberate action. It's strategy with volume, clarity, and courage. They are not content to support you in theory. They are dismantling the very systems that tried to erase you. They're pulling down the scaffolds of rumor, tracing the chain of who said what, and naming the rooms where decisions were twisted. They're confronting what others tiptoed around for years, not from pity, but from principle, because injustice is not a misunderstanding, it's a method. They are taking your case beyond the gossip loop and straight to the tables that set outcomes. They're not arguing with cowards in corners. They're walking into the offices that once pretended not to hear. They do not sway. They do not stall. And they do not scare. Contend, O Lord, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me. Psalm 35:1. What happens to a room that once ignored you when a credible voice reads the record out loud? Your enemies were confident because they thought you were alone. That's why they pressed so hard. They believed there was no one withstanding to challenge them. No one with the authority to say, enough. But the moment your defender stepped in, fear changed sides. Networks that felt unbreakable started to fall quiet. Threads that held the lies together began to separate. People who once covered for the deception are either silent or sprinting to distance themselves. When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. Proverbs 21:15. If justice is finally moving, who will still stand when the lights stay on? To ground this in real life, Erin Brockovich, a legal clerk turned consumer advocate, saw a pattern of harm others tried to minimize. She kept pushing until a giant had to answer in public with consequences. That's the kind of presence defending you now, not loud for attention, but persistent for accountability, and for a cautionary villain and the cost of enabling him, Alan Stanford, once hailed as a billionaire philanthropist and sports patron, masterminded one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history. Politicians, celebrities, and even regulators lent him credibility until the entire facade collapsed. When the truth came to light, fortunes vanished overnight. Allies scrambled to escape the fallout, and many learned too late that their association was a permanent scar. That is what happens when a defender with facts and resolve forces the record to be read. Your defender isn't improvising. They're calculated without being cold, bold without being reckless. They come with a timeline, a paper trail, and names. They address the top, not the side chatter. They lay out the pattern, how it started, who participated, how it was hidden, and who benefited. They do not aim at people just to wound. They aim at practices to end them. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. 1 Corinthians 4-5. When motives are exposed, which story can survive a cross-examination? This is more than protection. It's prosecution in the realm of truth. Your defender is not trying to win the internet. They're securing accountability where it counts, where signatures are made, where reputations are measured, where decisions get reversed, and the effect is unmistakable. Those who once smirked when your name came up are suddenly careful. Those who tossed your reputation into the furnace now pretend they never touched the match. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54-17. Now that fear has changed sides. What step becomes non-negotiable for you? Your silence once looked like weakness to them. Now it reads as wisdom. You did not chase microphones or perform outrage. You lived with integrity long enough for evidence to grow teeth. The defender at your side recognizes that and is saying the part others refuse to say. In the places that matter most, they are not defending you out of hype, but out of proof. They don't play to the crowd, they submit receipts. That is why alliances built in the dark are failing in the light. That is why the tone of old opponents has shifted from bold to brittle. That is why the legacy of the cloud is already showing cracks. Rejoice not over me, O my enemy. When I fall, I shall rise. When I sit in darkness, the Lord will be a light to me. Micah 7:8. And here is the part your enemies never planned for. The one defending you is not a bodyguard. They are a battering ram to every lie told about you. They are dangerous because they are principled. Dangerous because they are prepared. Dangerous because they are immune to the games that used to work on everyone else. Their voice is not a favor, it's a reckoning. Their presence is not a trend, it's an audit. And their commitment does not stop with clearing your name. It continues until the structures that harmed you cannot be rebuilt. Keep your spine straight and your boundaries firm. Walk into the next room without apology. You do not owe access to those who only offer support when it's safe. Bless what is sincere. Forgive what is past. And refuse to hand your future back to the people who tried to steal it. Your defender is doing the speaking. Your job is to do the walking. This is your hour to move forward with a steady voice and clean hands while every false pillar falls. Stand up. Step through. And don't look back. Your enemies are meeting the one thing they never prepared for. The horror of being seen, truly seen by someone whose gaze carries consequences. They were never afraid of you. That's why they postured so boldly. You didn't have the connections or the backing they respected. You had the truth. But they gambled on a cruel calculus that most people only care about truth when it arrives wearing a crown, and no creature is hidden from his sight. But all are naked, and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account. Hebrews 4:13. What changes in a room when the audience is no longer impressed, but informed? They mocked your name and walked away without blinking. Confident you couldn't touch them. Back then, you couldn't. But the table has turned. And not because you shouted louder, it turned because a voice with actual authority is watching them now. This watcher isn't interested in charm, titles, or rehearsed apologies. There is no shared history to protect, no convenient bias to exploit, no handshake hiding behind a smile. He reveals the deep things of darkness and brings utter darkness into the light. Job 12:22. When the light is this clear, which shadow can pretend to be shelter? For the first time, your enemies are being read without filters. No more gossip fog, no more spin. The person looking at the mess has steady eyes that do not blink. They can't be gaslit into doubt or talked into delaying the obvious. The old tricks, sweet talk, staged tears, polite outrage lie where they fall. Useless as broken tools in wet grass, like low tide pulling back the sea. Everything that once hid beneath the surface is suddenly standing on bare sand, like a winter field at daybreak. The quiet snow shows every footprint, exact paths, exact timing. No more guessing. This gaze doesn't flinch when confronted by performance. It doesn't soften because someone plays small or smiles wide. What terrifies your enemies isn't being caught. It's being caught by someone they cannot bend. They can't charm their way into favor or cry their way into sympathy. The spotlight has shifted, and it burns through every mask they've ever worn. The spectacle they controlled is over. The room is no longer theirs to choreograph. Like a thunderhead's anvil spreading across the sky before the first strike, the weight of consequence arrives long before the noise. Everyone feels it. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6-7. When the harvest begins, which seeds do they wish they never planted? And here is the humiliation that stings. This reckoning isn't coming from the person they dismissed. It's coming from someone who can move doors open, close, or lock without warning. Someone whose words travel farther than their networks ever did. The same spaces that once echoed with your defamation are now repeating a different line, and it isn't theirs. The old confidence drains quickly when the room recognizes a new center of gravity, like ravens falling silent when an eagle's shadow passes over the ridge. The chatter dies on its own. When evildoers assault me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and foes, it is they who stumble and fall. Psalm 27:2. Which stumble hurts more, the slip in public or the collapse of their private bravado? Art anticipated this moment. In Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, a simple sentence cleaves through pretense. Truth will out. That's the feeling now, inevitable. Unhurried. Absolute. What once felt like a debate has become a sunrise. You don't argue about a sunrise. You notice it. And you adjust your eyes. For God will bring every deed into judgment, with every secret thing, whether good or evil. Ecclesiastes 12:14. If judgment has entered the room this openly, what posture best fits the day? Panic or peace? Your enemies are spiraling because control has slipped from their fingers. They can't curate who watches, and they can't coach the narrator. Their old alliances are quiet or evaporating altogether. People who once provided cover are stepping back, deleting messages, and pretending they were uncertain all along. But uncertainty has a look. This isn't it. This is distance born of fear. And fear always arrives late. like wind rolling across a tall grass plain. You can see it coming before you feel it. Heads bow in sequence, and no blade stands unchanged. They cannot twist the narrative this time because the teller isn't theirs. The voice assessing them has nothing to gain from flattery and nothing to lose from truth. No BS, no bargain, no appetite for theatre, only a clear read of what is, not what was sold. The horror they feel isn't just exposure, it's the end of the old escape plan. Every corridor they used to run down now ends in daylight. Every costume they once wore is see-through at noon, for nothing is hidden except to be made manifest, nor is anything secret except to come to light. Mark 4:22. With the light this bright, where could they possibly go? And you're not scrambling to explain. You're not rushing to correct the record. You are steady, because the truth is finally speaking in a voice they can't edit. Your part is simple and strong. Keep your peace. Keep your boundaries. Keep your stride. The room is learning what heaven always knew. The watcher is doing the watching. The scales are balancing in public view, like the moment before lightning spears the horizon. The air holds its breath, then the sky splits, and no one doubts what just happened. Lift your head and walk forward without apology. Do not trade your clarity for their panic or your peace for their edits. Bless the day for telling the truth out loud. Let the record stand where it is standing. You don't owe the old room a new explanation. Step through the door that opened and keep moving clean hands. Steady eyes. Unbent Spine. The one who sees has spoken. Live like it. What they meant for harm has become the very archive that condemns them. They thought they were clever. Every whisper off record. Every trap engineered for an outburst. Every screenshot ripped from context. Those were weapons designed to fracture your credibility. They plotted in silence, captured calls, tracked your movements, parsed your phrases with surgical precision, and stockpiled evidence the way a forger stockpiles stamps. In their minds, the case was closed before it began. You were supposed to break, to plead, to buckle under the optics. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Genesis 50:20. If malicious intent becomes raw material in God's hands, what outcome can their strategy actually control? They believed you were cornered, but the corner wasn't yours, it was theirs. The very artifacts they curated are now being re-examined under competent light. Chain of custody. Timestamp integrity. Metadata trails. Message provenance. Under this level of scrutiny, their receipts keep boomeranging back to their own intent. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and a stone will come back on him who starts it rolling. Proverbs 26:27. Which piece will indict them first? The edit that amputated context, the alias that seeded rumors, or the synchronized timestamps that prove coordination? Here's what shifted. A neutral authority with consequences is reading the record, not a fan, not an enemy, a witness standing. Think forensic audit rather than gossip thread, probative value rather than volume, Bayesian update rather than gut feel. Their screenshots, once weaponized to make you look volatile, now map to a pattern of inducement, provocation to selective capture to dissemination. In signal processing terms, your steady baseline is separated from their noise injection. Once the noise floor is measured, false spikes are obvious. They engineered a narrative arc, but heaven wrote the blueprint. This is architecture, not accident. Providence placed a hidden load path in your story, so the weight of slander would transfer off you and onto the beams that actually produced it. In the quiet interval between rounds, that breath between bells, where only a cornerman and a judge can speak, God kept telling you, hold posture, don't swing wild, let the score accumulate. Now the bell has sounded, and the review is public. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, Ephesians 5:13. If visibility is the new environment, who still knows how to operate? They once counted on your lack of access. You didn't have the rooms, the Rolodex, the microphones. But the review did not need your microphone. It needed their audit trail. The very receipts they curated now prove men's rea not misunderstanding, but method. Their version collapsed under cross-examination, motive misaligned with message. Edits that sharpen accusation while dulling context. Witness overlap that betrays collusion. The more the file is read, the more the causal graph points away from you and back to the authors of the setup. To anchor this with a fresh real-life voice, Cynthia Cooper, the internal audit executive who exposed the WorldCom fraud, described ethics as choosing truth when it's costly and methodical, following the ledger where it leads. Her team's reconciliation schedules, variance analyses, and journal entry tracing didn't shout. They demonstrated, that's your moment now. Not theater traceability, not noise numbers. The room is watching someone with that same temperament walk through the file, line by line, while your enemies realize the file is theirs. And here's the reversal they never priced in. Their evidence has become an evidentiary mirror. All the late-night compilations, clipped phrases, and manufactured corroborations now read as obsessive surveillance. The screenshots don't depict your instability, they expose their pattern of stalking. The voice notes don't show your malice, they show leading questions designed to extract a reaction. The calendar overlaps don't prove your scheming, they reveal pre-positioned ambushes. The more factual the review, the more entropy drains from your side of the story and floods theirs. People who were silent now step forward with their own receipts, not to perform, but to align the data model with reality. Independent witnesses, séparate sources, parallel logs. This is triangulation, not trend. And unlike before, the room isn't dominated by personalities, it's governed by evidentiary standards. The neutral reviewer does not curve the grading. They don't manage optics. They test claims. They reconcile. They note outliers. Then ask why. Every answer they document tightens the arc around one conclusion. The scheme was a scheme. Surely the wrath of man shall praise you. The remnant of wrath you will put on like a belt. Psalm 76:10. If God can harness what was meant to hurt you, what fuel remains for their momentum? Heaven's architecture keeps surfacing. The plan wasn't to make you a louder debater. It was to make you an unshakable reference state. In structural terms, your character functioned like a sheer wall, boring to look at until the lateral forces arrive. While they tried to induce a resonance in you, push, bait, spike, you absorbed the energy without catastrophic oscillation. No aliasing, no overcorrection. That stillness is now the control in the experiment. The baseline that proves their input created their output. You didn't need to embellish, edit, or exaggerate. You only had to outlast the test window. Now, the consequences. Their messages have become nails in their own narrative. Their witnesses are recalling statements under the weight of sworn context. Their timelines are failing consistency checks. Rooms that once amplified rumor are requesting version history and raw exports. The same channels that welcomed their uploads are now flagging manipulation artifacts. And the people who matter most, they aren't swayed by volume, They're moved by verifiability. No weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed. And you shall refute every tongue that rises against you in judgment. Isaiah 54:17. With judgment now operating on record. What door must you refuse to re-enter? Here is the headline no one can spin. The evidence speaks louder than any narrative ever tried to spin. The setup didn't need a counter-setup. It needed time and truth. Your enemies rehearsed for your collapse. Heaven scheduled their review. Your task remains beautifully simple. Keep your stance. Keep your boundaries. Keep your breath. The judge is reading from their file, not your fears, and the verdict is emerging in public. Line upon line, page upon page, shoulders back, eyes clear. Step through the doorway, God framed on the blueprint. No committee can edit. Do not barter your clarity for anyone's panic or your peace for anyone's revision. Accept restoration without surrendering discernment. Speak when led and when not. Let the record continue doing the speaking. You outlived the setup. Now walk like someone whose name is carried by truth, not by noise. You weren't just vindicated, you were weaponized by heaven. This was never simply about clearing your name. It was about transforming your pain into power, your scars into strategy, and your suffering into a sword. Every betrayal, every breakdown, every silent battle was raw material in the forge of the divine. What you thought was an ending was actually an equipping preparation, not just for your healing, but for the reach of your impact. Your scars no longer sit quietly. They speak with a weight your voice alone never needed to carry. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Revelation 12:11. They have become proof not only of what you endured, but of what you were always destined to overcome, making you unshakable in the face of any future storm. Now, someone with genuine influence has taken up your story not to harvest pity, but to ignite a movement. They aren't whispering in shaded corners. They are roaring in places where it counts. They confront injustice head-on. They don't just nudge the table. They shake it until every piece of false order falls. And because their voice holds respect in rooms that once silenced you, people are listening, really listening. They're not only hearing the facts, they're feeling the shift in power, realizing the balance has tipped and it will never tilt back the same way again. This moment reminds me of a truth once shared by Christine Lagarde, President of the European Central Bank. Courage is when you have the strength to speak up for what's right. Even when you stand alone, your advocate is doing exactly that, not because it's fashionable, but because it's necessary. And if no one dared to stand alone, how many walls of injustice would still be standing today? They're moving with the kind of conviction that forces even the most reluctant witnesses to reconsider their silence. Every word they speak is a stone taken out of the enemy's wall and placed into the foundation of your restoration. Heaven didn't just pull you out of the pit. It forged you into a weapon, not for revenge, but for righteous reckoning. You didn't just survive the thing that tried to end you. You became proof that darkness doesn't get the final word. And now, that proof is in the hands of someone dismantling the very systems and alliances that once buried you. They're not working in shadows. They're dismantling in daylight, ensuring that every spectator sees the collapse with their own eyes. The work is methodical, calculated, and impossible to stop. Now that it's begun, you are no longer the subject of someone else's narrative. You are the spark behind a movement. The defender by your side isn't here to play safe or protect egos. They wield your truth like a finely honed blade, cutting through lies, exposing power games, and unveiling the cover-ups others fought to keep hidden. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. And if truth this sharp cannot break the chains, then what can? They're not using your story as a shield. They're using it as a battering ram to knock down the doors that were once closed to you. And each door that falls sends a message. The season of silence is over. And just as there are champions of truth, there are those who build their kingdoms on deceit, and the fall can be brutal. Lance Armstrong, once celebrated as an untouchable sports icon, when his years of deception came to light, it didn't just strip titles, it collapsed an entire empire of endorsements, influence, and trust. Your adversaries risk the same collapse, because your story, carried by a credible voice, has made the ground under their feet unstable. What they built on illusion is now cracking under the weight of truth. And they know it's only a matter of time before the whole facade falls. Your pain is no longer a secret. It's a weapon of light in trained hands. Those who mocked you are silent now, not out of respect, but out of fear. Fear of the reach. Fear of the volume. Fear of the fact that you didn't even have to raise your voice. God assigned someone else to carry the sound it take, ensuring your name isn't just restored, it's etched into memory. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to save many people alive. Genesis 50:20. And once a name is carved into the foundation of truth, it can't be erased by the waves of gossip or the storms of opinion. Your vindication arrived with a mission. You're not just living proof of survival, you are the strategy itself. A divine weapon, a holy disruption, a voice they cannot mute. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 60:1. If God has armed you for this moment, why would you walk as if you were unarmed? This isn't the end of the story, it's the commissioning of your next chapter. And in this chapter, you're not reacting to attacks, you're advancing with purpose. Step forward with the authority your scars purchased. Do not soften truth to ease the conscience of those who profited from the lie. This is your moment to build, to lead, to set precedent. You are no longer defending your place, you are defining the landscape. And as you move, heaven moves with you, ensuring no one can shut the doors you were born to walk through. The shift you're feeling wasn't luck, it was divine legal warfare in motion. This wasn't some cosmic coincidence or a lucky break where timing finally decided to smile at you. No, this was a courtroom in heaven, convening on your behalf. It wasn't emotional, it was judicial. It wasn't about your tears, it was about the laws they shattered in the spiritual realm, the law of truth, the law of justice, the immutable law of sowing and reaping, for the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all those who wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. For years it seemed like they had gotten away with everything. They lied, sabotaged, and paraded your humiliation like a trophy. But while they laughed in the open, heaven was building a case in the hidden chambers, brick by brick, like a cathedral of truth rising in the dark. And now, the verdict has been read aloud in the corridors of eternity. The appearance of your defender isn't just an act of kindness, it's physical proof that a supernatural order has been signed and sealed against your enemies. Can you feel it? It's like the first cracks forming on the surface of a frozen lake, small at first, but signaling the inevitable break beneath. They can already sense it in their bones, doors closing that used to open, allies withdrawing that once swore loyalty. This isn't gossip. This is gravity pulling down the structures they built in defiance of heaven's order. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. It brings to mind the final trial scene in A Man for All Seasons, when Sir Thomas More, though outwardly defeated, stands unshaken before the court that condemns him, knowing heaven's law outranks any earthly judgment. In your story, God himself has stood in that witness box, declaring, "Enough, case closed." And when the judge of all creation rules in your favor, there is no appeal. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. What they once celebrated as their victory is already turning into the rope that tightens around their own ambitions. This is not a pending trial. The sentence is already active. The exposure, the shame, the public unraveling of their carefully polished image, each is part of a divine correction, rolled out with the precision of waves eroding a cliffside, slowly at first. Then all at once, the foundation gives way. They didn't just hurt you, they violated something sacred, something woven into the moral fabric of the universe. And now the consequences are cascading: spiritual, emotional, even physical. Did they really think God would stay silent forever? You didn't need to take revenge because heaven has already filed the charges, argued the case, and executed the sentence. Your defender is just the visible part of this supernatural judgment, the trumpet blast before the walls fall. The shield that once covered your enemies is gone. The grace they lived under has been lifted. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. Romans 12:19. Like an ancient oak struck by lightning, their once imposing structure is hollow inside, waiting for the moment it collapses into dust. They thought burying you in silence would end the story, but they never saw the storm massing beyond the horizon. What looked like your quiet defeat was actually heaven's ambush, strategic, surgical, unstoppable. You didn't have to scream, argue, or plead your innocence. The eternal court did that for you, and now the tables have turned, not by your retaliation, but by God's, through undeniable truth, through the arrival of a fearless defender, and through perfect supernatural timing. Your enemies have been caught completely off guard. Can you see how every piece now fits? This shift is not emotional, it is judicial. Your life itself has become evidence. Your scars are sworn testimony. Your endurance is written in the permanent record of the highest court in existence. You are no longer fighting for a voice. You are the voice, the verdict, and the vindication. And like a lion's roar across the valley at dawn, it's a sound your enemies cannot unhear. And now, those who once schemed in the shadows to destroy you are standing before powers they cannot manipulate, influence, or outrun. Their strategies are collapsing, their alliances evaporating, and the very stage they once ruled is turning into their courtroom. So don't second-guess what's unfolding. Don't shrink now that the spotlight is finally on your justice. Stand tall. Stay anchored. Keep walking in your God-given grace. Because the same light that exposes them is the light that crowns you. What was once a weapon aimed at your downfall has now become the fortress guarding your destiny. This is more than vindication. This is heaven's public decree that you were never forgotten. And beloved, this is just the beginning. The pen has been taken from your enemy's hand, and your story is being rewritten in ink that cannot be erased. You've been validated by heaven, and now the world is being forced to watch the truth rise to the surface like gold from the fire. If this word stirred something in your spirit, don't just scroll away. Respond. Hit subscribe right now so you never miss a word that aligns with what God's already been whispering to your soul. Like this video to send the message higher, and let the algorithm know that truth still matters in this world. Comment below and share your testimony, your battle, your shift, your vindication, because your story has power to set someone else free. And to every single one of you who has supported this channel, whether through a super thanks or simply by showing up, watching, and engaging, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are part of this mission, part of this movement, part of this victory. Don't keep this to yourself. Share this message with someone who's been fighting in silence. Someone who needs to know that heaven fights for them too. This isn't just content. This is confirmation. This is clarity. This is your spiritual summons to rise. Tap the bell icon so you'll be the first to receive the next divine download. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are chosen. And as we walk this journey together, I speak blessings over you. May your path be lit, your heart be strengthened, and your enemies see with their own eyes that no one can curse what God has already blessed.